Hello students, we will start our new chapter in history, architecture in medieval India. Students, India is famous for its tourist spots in the world. Its vibrant cultural diversity is a major source of attraction for the travelers today. India gets its fame from the magnificent architecture and buildings of the medieval period. They are not just relic but can be considered as a marvelous of engineering, architectures, artwork, color, design and material used in the days. Let us see how art and architecture grew and prospered during the medieval period. Students, the medieval period saw great developments in the field of architecture. Architecture means the art of buildings. Architecture was a major activity during the medieval period. It was a medium by which rulers used to express their power and position. All kings of the period built several famous monuments. Monuments have historical, architectural, social, and religious values. Historical monuments are very old buildings that have existed for many centuries. These include palaces, haveli, fort, temples, mosques, church, tomb, dargah, etc. Historical monuments are of two broad types: religious monuments and secular monuments. Religious monuments are buildings that have been built and used for religious purpose. Temples, church, mosque, and stupas are religious monuments. Secular monuments are buildings used for any purpose other than religion. Palaces, forts, residential houses, and tanks are examples of secular structure. The early medieval period. Students, the temples and monuments of the later medieval period of Indian architecture are too numerous to describe here. Beside the old centers, new art centers were being patronized by the Palas, the Chalukyas and the Cholas, the Ganga and the Rajputas. Each center developed its own style. North India. A large number of temples were constructed in North India during the early medieval period. Most of the temples constructed were dedicated to either Vishnu or Shiva. The style of temple architecture was known as Nagara, a good example of style of temple architecture. This style is group of temples of Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh. They were built by the Chandela rulers. The Parshvanath temple, the Vishnu temple are examples. Temples were constructed in the Nagara style. The temple of Odisha, Mukteshwar temple and the Lingaraj temple at the Bhubaneswar, the Sun temple at Konark and the Jagannath temple at Puri are also illustrative of the Nagara style. The Dilwara temple at Mount Abu in Rajasthan was built by the rulers of the Solanki dynasty. In South India, the Pallavas, the Pandyas and the Cholas were the main dynasties of the south. The Pallavas built the Rath temple and the Shore temple and Mahabalipuram and the Kailashnath temple at Kanchi. The Pandyas constructed temples in the capital city of Madurai. The Cholas kings were great temple builders. They built a large number of temples in different parts of their empire. Many obtained through donation was used for the construction. The Cholas temples were built in the Deoband style. The gateway of the temples was called Gopapuram. The main Shreni or the chief deity room was known as Garbhagriha. The images of god and goddesses were kept there. These images were made up of stone or bronze. On top of the main Shreni was a tall structure called Shikara. Another structure situated in front of the main Shreni was called the Mandapa. It was an audience hall where people gathered for prayers. Indo-Islamic architecture. With the coming of Muslims to India, many new features came to be introduced in buildings. The development of Muslim style of architecture of this period can be called the Indo-Islamic architecture. The Indo-Islamic style was neither strictly Islamic nor strictly Hindu. They are the Delhi or the imperial style and the Mughal architecture. The imperial style developed under the patronage of Sultans of Delhi. The Mughal architecture was a blend of the Islamic architecture of Central Asia and the Hindu architecture of India. Some features are the most important symbol of Indo-Islamic architecture in India is the tomb. Some of the basic features of the Mughal architecture are the round tomb, high minarets, mihrabs, pillars, open courtyards, etc. A notable feature of the Mughal architectures was the use of red sandstone. It is interesting to note that red sandstone was used for construction of huge buildings and forts. However, red sandstone was replaced with the white marble during the later period, when the stress was more on beautifying of the buildings with the use of colored designs, precious and semi-precious stone, gold and silver, water and miniature carving. The verses from the Holy Quran were also engraved on some in many structures. Typical Hindu modifiers such as swastik, lotus and bell were used. The Mughal architecture reached perfection during the reign of Shah Jahan, the great patron of architecture. He is called the Engineer King, as he built a large numbers of buildings. Under Shah Jahan, there was a change in the building style as well as material. The emphasis was now unfortunately a symmetry, red sandstone, popular with Akbar and Jahangir, was replaced by white marble. The walls began to be decorated with precious and semi-precious stones. This method of decoration is called a pitra dure. Domes and minarets also begin to form an important part of the buildings. The interior of the mountains began to form an important part of the buildings, having multiple columns, curved roofs, and big and small arcs. The interior were also decorated with flora, modify and calligraphy. Verses from the Holy Quran. Some monuments constructed like early buildings of Shah Jahan include Tomb Jahangir near Lahore and the Tomb of Noor Jahan. He also constructed many mosques. The Moti Masjid in Agra was completed in 1653. It is built entirely of white marble and has 3 domes. The Jama Masjid in Delhi was completed in 1656. It is the largest mosque in India. Taj Mahal. The most famous monument constructed by Shah Jahan is the Taj Mahal. He built it in memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. The Taj is placed in the middle of a garden. It is built of white marble. The Taj has a huge pearl-shaped dome and 4 slender miniatures which link platform to main buildings. The interior has the marble central of Mumtaz Mahal and Shah Jahan. Dread Fort. In the beginning of his reign, Shah Jahan ruled from Agra but later